right, hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. We got an action-packed show for you today as Florida State has fired head coach Willie Taggart halfway through the season, so we're going to be hitting on that later in the show, but we're going to start off with Coaching Corner. Matt, you had a big win in the first round of the state playoffs. What do you expect going into round two?
Well, it'd be nice if we had exactly the same for the next round. The old saying goes, how you practice is how you play in a game. And I got to be honest, that this was arguably the best week of coaching and practicing that I saw from my kids this week. So I was really happy from a program building standpoint to have something tangible to show them that when you put forth the kind of effort that you do and that you did, that you're able to reap the benefits of it. And you see exactly what happened. Because I felt like, with the exception of the last part of the drive in the second quarter and the opening kick, we played almost a perfect game. We executed well offensively. We were able to create some turnovers. We did have a bad roughing the quarterback penalty that put the ball back into Penn's Manor's hands. It led to them throwing a deep pass and blown coverage. They scored their only touchdown right before halftime. We were supposed to have the ball coming out the gate in the third quarter, and they were able to recover an onside. Just wasn't a good play. But other than that, I hang about this week.
Yeah, good luck going forward. Hoping you can get that next round win and move closer to a district championship. Let's go ahead. I'm going to mix up the show, though. We're going to do high tempo later. I want to get right into the NFL stuff off the top because I know we're going to go long on college. Big win by the Pittsburgh Steelers against the Indianapolis Colts. They had a lucky break with the quarterback injury for the Colts, but I really don't know how that would have changed the outcome because I felt like the Colts were handicapping their offense the entire season. They weren't going for the jugular like you would expect. But I like what I saw from the Steelers. They battled back. I think they needed a game like that, back and forth, if they're going to make a push for the playoffs. And right now, they're in the mix. Behind those Colts, they have a 500 record. Let's go. Get the big win against the Rams and sit at 5-4. Because if you get to that point, you have a very winnable slate of games. You have the Browns, Bengals, Browns. You could potentially be 8-4. But you can't stop right now because what happened, the Ravens keep winning. And we're going to get into that in a second. But I want to give you a chance to talk about the Steelers. Any thoughts from that game, Matt?
One of the bigger plays that I saw was they were able to create a turnover. And I tweeted it out. It was just, why even try to get a first down? Why try to go for a touchdown where you know they aren't going to do anything with that extra possession? And this is what's frustrating watching the Steelers is that they never capitalize on these plays. You never see them drive down and get an important touchdown when they need it. It's always just run 3 plays. I would have much rather than just take a knee. Just take a knee for 3 plays. You're already in the red zone. And take a knee, run the clock, and then kick a field goal. Because that's what they were going to get anyhow. And then at least you know they're not going to fumble it, and they're not going to throw an interception.
So you'd rather them just take knees, and I know you're joking. But at that point...
No, honestly, with how they play, I'm surprised that they didn't throw an interception or give the ball back to them. They got a turnover, and they were immediately in field goal range. Why not just say, we're going to take the points? And just take a knee, shoot time off the clock, and you play it safe. Because Tomlin's whole mindset is let the defense win it for you. And I think with as well as the secondary's playing right now, you can rely on them to do that. Just go all in with that mindset.
I got to say I can't disagree with you. I think at that point they were down, what, I don't even remember the score because it was a weird score. I do know that, but
because of the safety.
Yeah, because there was a safety, of course, but just play to win. If you want to settle for the points, I understand that. They got the win anyway, and now they're looking at a Rams team. Do you think they have a chance going into this Rams game?
They'll play them tough because it's the Rams, but I don't know. It worries me because I think they were exposed in the Super Bowl with how to beat them, and I think that they have the ability to play the man coverage that they need to, but the bottom line is, will they execute? And I just don't know that they will.
Well, the interesting thing looking at the Steelers is they have a very young team built around, and I know the Roethlisberger injury doesn't help because they could have a little bit of veteran leadership right now where it seems they're very green all around. So if they were able to get this win, and like I said, get some momentum against their division rivals, I mean, this could be a gigantic game for their season if you look back in retrospect. I know the Colts too, because they had a winning record. They would be tied for the division lead if the Steelers hadn't beat them. So where do you go from here if you want to build some confidence? 4-1 in the last 5. Same with the Ravens. You're not getting any closer, but you're able to grow. Everyone always says that Tomlin hasn't had a losing record. Keep going. So I want to see them come out with a plan, execute it. And one thing I want to see, I think they've taken some shots, but I don't think they're really confident shots, if you know what I mean. I feel like Rudolph's being coached into, okay, take that deep throw, and I think that's hurt him, where I want to see him come out confident and willing to sling it downfield, and not just because that's the number one read.
I think they could tailor it to, I mean, he took plenty of shots when he was at Oklahoma State, so I think he's capable of it. They try to make a bigger deal out of his arm strength than anything, but I think what they're better off doing is game planning more of those comfortable shots, because there's ways that you can take advantage of some deep throws, and it just seems like, well, they're not confident in him, or they're just saying, just don't lose it. Like, don't do anything to put us in a spot where we're going to lose this game, because the defense playing well. I mean, Fitzpatrick had the interception return for a touchdown. That, you know, they're getting defensive help. That it's like, just manage the game. We're going to try to run. We're going to try to establish some semblance of a ground game. We're going to score just enough points to maintain a lead. They're finding a formula that works for them and riding it out.
And I think that's where I think some of the play calling can help him. If you compare the game with Duck Hodges to what they're throwing Rudolph out there with, it feels like they're giving him more of the playbook, but help him spread the ball around. I feel like they held Duck Hodges' hands and put it more in the coaching staff on getting players open. Why not do the same thing with Rudolph? I mean, you're putting him in the situation where he's getting more of the playbook. Great. It's going to be harder for the defenses. But if he already knows that much of the playbook, focus on his strengths and some game planning aspect of it from the coaching staff. I would like to see that going forward. I think they really did it when they knew they had Hodges. Okay, let's get a game plan together and let's try to win the game. And they were able to do that with a limited playbook. Do the same thing with Rudolph and try to get his confidence going, because that's how you're going to win. You want to stay motivated against the Browns and the Bengals coming up. Have a good game plan. Let him spread the ball around and get the guys some help. I mean, my only gripe is Juju, once again, missing a catch right for an interception. I mean, if you're going to be the number one receiver, you got to make plays. I wouldn't care if it was a nobody trying to be the number one, but Juju has as much publicity that Antonio Brown had. They were in the same commercials last year. He's doing all kind of advertising. We had some negative feedback because I posted something about him fumbling the ball when he was on the front of Sports Illustrated over the weekend. And it's the same thing. If you're going to be in the limelight, you got to make big plays. What's the saying? Big-time players make big-time plays. I haven't seen it from him. So I don't care if he's out there doing the advertising. If you want to do that, it's the same reason a lot of people gave Peyton Manning shit. Like, okay, go out there and do all these commercials once you lose in the playoffs early. Like, I don't care if you're out there getting publicity and doing advertisements and things like that. But whenever you're not playing on the field, at this point, I'd feel more reliable with James Washington. So that's just my last thought. Anything else you got on the Steelers, Matt?
That almost makes more sense because Mason Rudolph already has rapport with him. And it might be better putting him out there as the one and moving Juju around where he can play more inside or in the slot and taking advantage of some matchup type stuff.
That was a strength last year. I just want to see more of an effort. You shouldn't be dropping balls through your hands as the number one receiver. I mean, if you look at some of the greats, I know they had their drops, but keep your hands together. If you're going to miss the ball, at least knock it down. Not right through your hands. That's a rookie mistake. Unfortunately, let's move on to the Ravens. Upset the Patriots. I thought this was looking like a sleeper Patriot team that could go undefeated. If I'm being honest, I thought their schedule kind of lined up for them. You have the Bills as being good, but I didn't think they were quite great enough to actually challenge them. They steamrolled the opponents they were supposed to steamroll, like the Dolphins. But then the defense showed some holes against Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens maintained a 2-game lead over the Steelers. So at this point, like I said, if the Steelers can win, even if they drop to the Rams, you still have a chance to be 7-5. But I mean, 8-4 sounds a whole lot better. And that's under the assumption that you're able to beat the Bengals again and sweep the Browns, as the Browns have looked awful. But the Ravens right now look like contenders. So that's unfortunate, as it seemed like a year or two ago they were going to push out John Harbaugh. Instead, they reinvented themselves into more of a spread type offense that, I mean, let's be honest, they really haven't had success in the NFL running the same style that they run in college. And here you have it, taking down Belichick's defense that looked unstoppable so far. So from your coaching perspective, Matt, what do you think of the Ravens and Patriots going forward?
Well, I think that Baltimore is going to be a problem as long as Lamar Jackson's quarterbacking. You know, we've talked about this so many times. He's a very good quarterback. He's a very mobile quarterback. He can do a lot of things for their offense. Is he going to be durable enough? Because it seems like with a lot of the mobile quarterbacks, they just get a beat on them, and I think that he's benefiting right now from players not really drilling him. But I think he's going to end up taking some shots, scrambling around as people try to just put him out so that they don't have to deal with him. Can he physically handle the punishment?
Yeah, looking at it, and I think that's what annoys me most about the Juju stuff and why it brought back bad memories. Steelers were in overtime with them. They had the ball. Juju fumbles. I had someone tell me that they didn't count the fumble on Juju as why they lost the Ravens game. Why the hell not? It was in overtime. Steelers were driving. He makes that catch there, somewhere around midfield. Sure, they might not have settled for a field goal, but the Ravens were then right in field goal range. One play.
Yep.
So it's 100% on him. You can't say the Saints game was more on him when you were in the same situation. Steelers were driving. I know they weren't as far in overtime, but there's a big difference between getting the first catch, moving the chains, and fumbling it and giving it right back to the Ravens. when all they need is a field goal to win because you already put your defense on the field. You thought that was your strength and got the ball back. In retrospect, it was a great play by Tomlin, just into defense. I thought they should have put the offense out and tried to get a touchdown. But now looking back at that game, I feel like if the Steelers miss the playoffs, you have to point at Juju 2 years in a row. And it goes back to the number one thing. And then, like, you start right off the game against the Colts, he hits your hands, have an interception. Just frustrating. So, anything else you got on the NFL, Matt?
One of the things that I was just thinking about was, what the hell happened to the Bears? Like, they were a doinked field goal away from making a deep run in the playoffs last year, and it's like they went from contender back to pretender.
It's Mitch Trubisky. I said as I interrupted you, because once you get the film out on a quarterback, you can tell if they are a pretender. I said when they traded up for him, they made a mistake. I mean, he played at UNC. UNC does not have a world-beating schedule. He should have been better than what he was. If he's worth what they take him with, the overall number 2 pick. I mean, you can say the same thing for Daniel Jones. Sure, he's looked decent, but realistically, you played in a weak division. I mean, it feels like every year we're starting November and everyone's talking about how the ACC Coastal could have all of its teams tie at 4-4. That's pathetic. If you're a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, you should be able to dominate that division. And then yet you have quarterbacks that don't. They get drafted in the first round. I could see if he was like out of UCF or like a smaller school. But you're Power 5, you have to have some athletes. If you're as great as you are, show it in college. I mean, even with Daniel Jones, you have David Cutcliffe. He's supposed to be a quarterback whisperer. He handled both the Mannings. And you don't have it on the field so that whenever they draft you, everyone's like, what was that pick? Show me. And I'm not saying Daniel Jones is a bust, but Trubisky came out, looked decent. You're right, Matt. They had a run in the playoffs, could have went further. But now I think the tape's out on him. They know what he is, and they're already talking about benching him. I mean, what are you going to do?
Part of it, though, you can't pin it all on him because their defense has given up a lot of points as well. And I don't know if that's because they're spending so many extra possessions out on the field.
It has to wear you down.
But you just look, I mean, across the board, they're giving up a lot of points from week to week.
I mean you have the defense. They seem to be getting pressure big time, but when the offense isn't scoring, I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
I don't know. I just think it's bizarre because they're giving up. I mean, this season they've given up 36 to New Orleans. They've given up 24 to Oakland, 15 to Washington, 22 this past week to Philadelphia. I mean, I know they're hitting a tough stretch, but I mean, you would think that they would be able to play a little bit better.
That's where I'm going to try to bring up their stats here and take a look. They're 17th in points. It's the yardage. They average 266 yards, which is 29th in the NFL. If your offense isn't moving the ball, I mean, unless you have Reggie Roby back there throwing up 80-yard bombs as a punter, you're not getting good field position. I mean, their passing yards, 186 yards a game. 186. That's Navy numbers. I know they probably don't even have that much, but 30th in the league. And then they're rushing 80 and a half. So 27th. Good for 27th. All of their offensive stats are in the last 5. That's why you have the defense problems. I was trying to see if they had the time of possessions. They averaged 28 minutes, 34 seconds. I know that's not a tell-all. yeah, sure, you have bad stats, but you also have, the turnovers? Are they +2? Is that a good sign? Normally that means that's good for them. But it doesn't say what they have for the opponents. But overall, when you have bad stats and then you look at what the opponents have, they have 139 first downs compared to the opponent's 166. It just looks like you're not getting enough yards, putting your defense in bad spots, and that's the end of it. So, I mean, they're one of the ones. The Packers surprised me, but I don't even know.
Very much.
I don't even know if I'm confident in them going forward, because I don't know what to make out of the NFC North, let alone the rest of the NFC. You have the 49ers. They went to the wire against the Cardinals. Is it just because the Cardinals kind of have a unique offense and a young quarterback that they don't have film on? I mean, they brought in a running back from Miami that ran wild. So I don't know. How can you plug and play a running back into a supposedly unique system? In like, what was that, 4 days, Matt? When did they make that trade? Was that Sunday or Monday?
It was quick.
That was a Thursday night game. You were able to bring him in, teach him enough plays to gash the 49ers? That's what scares me if I'm a 49ers fan. But who knows? Are any of the offenses good in the NFC? They put Cam Newton on the IR finally. I think Deshaun Jackson was another one that went down for the Eagles.
Do you think he's done in Carolina?
Would you bring him back?
Might.
I would say, personally, if I was a Carolina fan, I would say it's time to move on from him. I love Cam Newton at Auburn. I think you have a coach that just doesn't fit with them. He seems to always be getting injured. He's taking hits. I think they need to move him out of the pocket more and get him in better spots. When they seem to do that, the routes aren't there. It's like they're not putting him in a position to succeed. Like I could look and see what the 49ers did with Kaepernick and now what John Harbaugh's doing similar with Lamar Jackson. I don't understand why they didn't go that route with Cam. I mean, hell, you could even say that Tim Tebow had a better offensive game plan when he played with the Broncos. I think they had a chance to win a Super Bowl with them. Didn't work out. That's all Carolina can expect. Cut them loose. Do to the next chapter. They seem to be confident right now with who they have at quarterback, enough that they can finally put him on IR. Let him go. See what happens. See if he can land somewhere. Because I think that there would be a team that would take a chance at him. And who knows? Maybe get somewhere where they're going to have the offenses. You keep hearing about the coaching carousel. We're going to get into it later, where a couple teams are looking at college quarterbacks, with like Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma. If he jumped to the NFL, I would want to see what he could do with Cam Newton. I mean, he has the size to take the hits. He might not have the speed that he had, but I think they could build it around, and that's just one example. Don't think that I'm throwing out there Lincoln Riley's going to come up to the NFL and then they're immediately going to trade for Cam Newton, whatever team he signs with. That's crazy, but that's all I have for the NFL. You got anything else, Matt?
No, that was it.
Let's get into high tempo. This one's on me because last week I had to modify our title for the show to double bye weeks. I hate the double bye in college this year because it messed up my take on Minnesota missing out on game day. Because I knew Penn State already had their first bye. Why were they getting a second bye? Never even occurred to me that they weren't going to play on Saturday. So I tune in and I'm like, all right, let's see what game's on last night or Saturday night. It's Memphis and SMU. I'm like, what is this? This isn't a big game. I was expecting some undefeated matchups. I didn't get it.
SMU was undefeated.
Matt, both teams weren't undefeated.
Both teams weren't.
They've been hyping up this LSU-Alabama matchup because of the double bye and the Penn State-Minnesota matchup for 2 weeks now. ESPN talked about it like it was last week. They didn't tell me it was 2 weeks from now when I saw the outrage from Memphis getting it. And to be fair, they should have had game day. What other game was good last week? Florida, Georgia? Really? People want to be there for that? No. So give it to Memphis. But now, I still wanted to go to Minnesota. So if you want to know my thoughts, just go back, listen to last week. They pretty much all stand. They picked Alabama and LSU again. Who cares? Two top teams. It would be like if they just picked Michigan and Ohio State every year. Like, okay, yeah, they're going to be top 10 or at least close to it each year, but does that really need to be game day every time? I mean, I'm sure you're going to get some other mix, and sometimes they have Auburn, Alabama, but come on. Picks it up. You have a chance to go to Minnesota. Go there. But that's my high tempo. Matt, you got anything else for high tempo?
I was just kind of surprised with Liberty this past week playing UMass and in the first half accumulating over 500 yards of offense, which, unrelated, do you know who UMass's coach is?
I feel like I do, but not off the top of my head.
It's Walt Bell. Do you know who Walt Bell is?
No, I do not know.
Well, that's because you've never been a part of a train wreck team before. Walt Bell orchestrated the worst offense last year in Florida State history. He was the OC, and then he jumped ship to go to UMass. And you know what UMass is doing right now? Absolutely stinking.
Wait, so who was the UMass coach previously? Did they take another job?
I think they fired him.
I thought they had someone that was up and coming, but I could be wrong. I might be thinking of someone else.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know that it was really bizarre that he jumped for essentially the first potential job that he could get. So it was like he left, and I was happy because it left the door open for them to hire Bryles, which I thought was the initial pick that they should have made anyhow.
Well, I'll be honest, looking at it, anytime a coach can jump the head coaching spot, I'll never knock him for it. Even if it doesn't work out, at least give it a go. I mean, it didn't work out for Mike Locksley.
When you jump to a head coaching spot, though, you got to make sure that it's a fit. That it's a good fit for you, it's a good fit for the program. Like when I looked at Claysburg with my team, I saw that I had the athletes that I could implement my system. I knew that there were going to be some challenges and things that we were going to have to develop as a program. But I mean, the main parts of it, I had an administration that was supportive, and I knew that the talent was there or going to be there, that we're going to be able to be a successful program long term. So I think that's, if you don't have a supportive administration or you don't have the type of kids for what you want to run, you could end up running yourself right into the ground.
I could see it both ways. Yeah, if you're going to be there long term, but like Mike Locksley took a head coaching gig, it went awful, but he was able to turn that into eventually an offensive coordinating gig with Alabama, because once you get that head coaching spot, then you're able to land at more of a prestigious school. Look at what Indiana's old coach, was it Tom Allen? He's at Ohio State now. I mean, he had some abuse allegations or whatever that made him get fired. So it wasn't like he was a train wreck of a coach. But once you make that head coach thing, then you're able to get hired at a program where they probably wouldn't have been hired before. So I could see it either way. Sometimes you just got to take that gamble. But UMass, if it doesn't work out, doesn't work out. I think we had, I don't know if we talked about this before we get back into football. Pirates fired Neil Huntington. I keep getting messages about it. And I know we've talked about the Pirates on and off about the show. But to be honest, I put high tempo and quick hitters back to back because for quick hitters, I wanted to talk about the college football playoff plan. But just one last thing for high tempo. The Pirates, it's hard to care about them. It's hard. They're extending what? They said they were going to do Chris Archer and Sterling Marte. Like that's going to help bring in seats or season ticket holders. They're doing just the bare minimum. Bob Nutting came out, hit all of the major Pittsburgh outlets. If you read them, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. They put out their fluff pieces. Oh, I mean, Bob Nutting has talked before about it, but this time he seems serious. Like, come on. You really believe that? You don't think that he just gave them some tickets? Like, hey, how about a press box no one's buying if you write some good pieces about me? Like, give me a break at this point. I really don't care. Prove it. Go out and get a big-time free agent. And don't just spend money on someone that's ancient. Get someone that's hot. Sign some guys. And then talk to me. I know I'm getting a lot of messages about it, but if you really want me to talk about the Pirates, what is there to talk about? You watch the Nationals. Nationals injected money into their team. And it took a while. They had some playoff blunders. The curse of the Astros. Maybe they finally got cursed because they had the lead. They fired that guy for something that happened last year in the middle of a World Series run. They deserve to lose. Nationals were probably excited to take advantage of that. So that's it. I don't know why I'm getting baseball messages, but that's why I figured I'd bring it up. Let's get back into football.
I thought we did bring it up.
That's what I said. I don't know. We're still getting messages about it. It might have been because of the Archer deal or the Sterling Marte deal. But I'm seeing a lot of Pirate stuff and how next year could be different. It's not going to be different. Every year it's going to be different. Never is. So,
like Charlie Brown trying to run up and kick the football.
Yep. Never going to happen. You have to inject money or at least build a nucleus. You haven't done either. Can't just trade away all your best prospects for Chris Archer and then what? Sign him? On the tail end of his career? Give me a break. Quick hitters. The big one. ESPN decided to put out an article. It was so poorly worded that I thought, what is this? I sent it to you at first because I had to read it a couple times. They asked college coaches that have been in the playoff discussion if they wanted to expand the college football playoffs. And lo and behold, Matt, most of the big name coaches, the Jim Harbaughs, the James Franklins, they wanted to expand it. Guess who didn't? Coaches like Dino Babers. Dino Babers came out from Syracuse and said, hey, if you expand it, it's going to make it harder for Cinderella to win at all. What the hell is he talking about? The playoffs had the same 4 teams like every year. What Cinderella has been in? UCF, was he serious that UCF has an actual national championship now? He thinks that won't happen if they expand the playoffs? Give me a break. How delusional are these guys? That's a guy that you know is going to be in the coaching search for Florida State, Matt. That's the kind of leader you guys are going to end up with. We'll get into that in a bit, but I'm saying I looked at the list. Kirk Ferentz, he was against it, and I love Kirk Ferentz. And his reasoning was dumb as well. Oh, well, you're hurting the regular season. And you know what? I thought about it, and I think I know why these coaches are against it. The postseason bonus. Because everyone that was against it is a half-assed coach that hasn't really won anything. I mean, Kirk Ferentz is outside, and you could say, okay, he's won what? One Rose Bowl, or Orange Bowl? He got his ass kicked against USC in the Rose Bowl. Did they win the Rose Bowl last time they were there, or did they get another ass kicking? So at some point, you know your team's a joke, and I'll say it. Any coach, Ryan Day was for it. He's a brand new coach, but guess what? He's at Ohio State. So he knows that he's going to have his team prepared, just like James Franklin. I'll see if I can bring up the actual list. I noticed Kirby Smart was against it. Why do you think that is? He can't even get through the SEC East, Matt. Losing to South Carolina, of course he doesn't want it expanded. He doesn't want to lose to UCF. Any thoughts on that? I'm going to look it up and get the actual list.
To be honest, I think when you're looking at expanding, it can be met both ways. Because on one hand, if you keep it as is, you're going to end up getting your top tier group of people, which I think it was slightly an improvement over the BCS and identifying some of those top teams. But realistically, you're not factoring in the non-power fives, and it's taking some of those Cinderella teams out. Essentially, with the current playoff format, you're looking at who's winning, who's outright winning, and then it becomes the eye test and the popularity contest of who are the best teams going to be. So right now, your teams like Clemson and your teams like Alabama are absolutely going to get an easy nod into the playoffs because they're going to make it, and they're probably going to beat whoever they play in the first round. So, I think when you look at some of these outside teams, how many of these people truly want to play Clemson or play Alabama in the first round? I think that's where some of these other coaches are getting at that. Yeah, if you expand the playoffs, then they get in, and then they get throttled by 70 to Alabama, or they do what Notre Dame did. I don't think that helps you in terms of recruiting. I don't think that it helps you in terms of program development. But if you're on the fringe like some of these programs are, that you can say, hey, we're a couple guys away. I think it's an easier recruiting pitch to say, if you commit, we can push to get into the playoffs with your help, compared to, well, we make the playoffs, but we get killed as soon as we get in every year by Alabama.
So I went through the list. I just read it 3 times. I do not see Nick Saban, but I did miss one guy that's against it that has won a national championship, and that is Dabo Swinney. But let's be real. We know that his team can't compete week in and week out. From the ACC, not tested. We don't know. So it's pretty clear that he wants to keep it as is because he only has to win 2 games in a row. And I think that was the argument Dino Babers was going to make. But here are the other guys. Chris Ash, fired. Babers, Matt Campbell, Dave Clawson, Jeff Collins, David Cutcliffe, Kirk Ferentz, Clay Helton, come on. Tom Herman, another guy that can't beat Maryland. Mike Loxley, speaking of Maryland. Matt Luke, Derek Mason, Joe Moorhead, Chad Morris, Will Muschamp, Pat Narduzzi. Of course, Pat Narduzzi doesn't want it expanded because he upsets one team, keeps his job, people like him, maybe he'll win a bowl game. If they were to happen to win the ACC and get an automatic bid to the playoff, he would just be embarrassed. Of course he doesn't want it to expand. Who else? Barry Odom, Jeremy Pruitt, the Kirby Smart I mentioned, Mark Stoops, Kevin Sumlin, and Mel Tucker. That's a who's who of coaches, Matt. These are guys that would actually benefit from an expanded playoff because they might make one. Outside of Kirby Smart and Dabo Swinney, like none of those coaches and any of those teams are going to make the playoffs. Let's be real. All the other heavy hitters are on the other side. They're for it. So you have guys like Gus Malzahn winning a national championship. He's on there. Even guys like Brian Kelly. But an expanded playoff would help Notre Dame, of course, 100%. Everyone wants to expand it. They actually, then I saw the actual part of the article. ESPN actually took a picture that Jim Harbaugh sent them of an Excel spreadsheet that he made. According to sources, I thought someone typed that up. That was supposedly from Harbaugh himself. He has a bracket that he made from last year because his playoff system is complex as hell. He wants to bring back the BCS and have that figure out the at-large bids, which I'm for the BCS, but I think I looked at some of the numbers back through the years, and I think what hurt it, conferences didn't have a uniform schedule. Some had 9 games, some have 8 games, some had 7 games, some had division, some didn't. Some had round robin. And I think if you're going to bring it back, it works well if there's a standardized system. Like, okay, you have to have 9 conference games. You have to have this or that. So his system is get rid of conference championships, which I think help the ACC. It helps the Big Ten. It helps the Big 12. And it helps the Pac-12. So I don't see how any 4 of those conferences vote against it. Look at this year. If Clemson loses the ACC championship, they're out. That game does not help them at all. They'd be better off not playing. The Big Ten, all their teams are on the same side. Same with, the Big 12 does like a top heavy. You're just giving your team another chance to lose. If you get rid of them, then you're letting the big boys in. And then he had, what else did he have? So he had the 5 Power 5 auto bids, which helps almost every single one of those coaches that I mentioned. If Pitt were to win the Coastal and win the ACC, they would not be in the playoffs this year. I'm for auto bids. The only thing I don't like about Harbaugh's system is the bye. But I understand where he's coming from. He added a bye because he only has 11 teams in. You get, the top Power 5 or non-Power 5, which would have been Notre Dame last year. And then in the previous year would have been UCF or whoever. And then you fill it with the BCS computers picking the next 5 teams. What are your thoughts on that? I sent it to you.
Yeah, I don't mind that format because then you're factoring in if you have a hiccup game, you're not getting penalized for it. I think that's one of the knocks of college football versus the NFL is that you could be a one-loss team, but if you lose in August or early September, it doesn't hurt you. Whereas if you lose now, if you lose in November, it almost automatically sinks your chances of a national championship.
And I'll say, I have the list. I sent you all of them just because I want people to know right now what's killing the playoffs is there's no diversity of teams. You're getting teams making it 2 or 3 every year. They just released the BCS first standings or the first college football playoff standings. Ohio State's number 1, followed by LSU, Alabama, and Penn State, I believe. Do you really think those teams are going to stay there? No, because they play each other. There's a chance you're going to get Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, and Oklahoma again. I mean, that's a legitimate chance. So then you're back where you were.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Those 4 teams in the playoffs, are you okay with that?
Right now, yeah, because I know that it's not going to work out. Penn State and Ohio State play. Alabama and LSU play this weekend.
But I'm saying, you were saying about Oklahoma, Clemson.
Oh, as it stands, I think, that's probably how it's going to. That's if they're champions. You could flip. If Penn State beats Ohio State, it might be Penn State. But right now, Ohio State looks like world beaters. They deserve to be number 1. I'm shocked that they're not number 1 already. They have had no close games. They ranked Cincinnati off the field. They boat raced Wisconsin. Like, what else do you want them to do? It's not like LSU played these top 10 teams, which includes Texas, which doesn't look like they're a top 10 team at all. And they're getting credit for that, which is great. But they haven't won pretty. And so now they could be blown out by Alabama for all we know. So let's see. I think right now I would have Ohio State, Alabama as number 2, just because I don't think you can put anyone ahead of Alabama. People are voting LSU ahead of Alabama. When's the last time they beat them? At some point, the culture of the program has to matter unless you're killing teams like Ohio State has. And then Penn State's in the same thing. They're undefeated. They've proved it on the field. Now they have to play Minnesota, so we'll see if that clears up. They beat Minnesota this weekend that's undefeated. Then they could even be 2 or 3. Probably 3, because I think Alabama's going to win, and I don't think anyone should pass them. The team that's going to be tough to get in is Clemson right now, because you're looking and hoping that teams ahead of you lose because the ACC is so bad. And I mean, we're going to talk about Florida State here probably for the rest of the show, but that's what you're looking at. The one last point I wanted to make if you expand the playoffs, it helps the entire sport. These are some teams, I know I just read a bunch of coaches making fun of them, but these are some teams that would have made it throughout the years. Boise State, Mississippi State, Arizona, Kansas State, Michigan State, which Michigan State made it regularly, Baylor, Stanford, North Carolina. Then you have Western Michigan, Oklahoma State, Colorado, UCF. I mentioned them earlier. Miami would have even made one. USC. I mean, there's such a diversity here that I was against the buy and stuff, but just seeing this list of teams and seeing teams like Boise State and UCF have a chance, I'm for it. And I think hopefully the clout that Harbaugh has, he's able to push something like this through. Because I think if they go to 8 teams without an auto bid, you're going to see the same thing. It might not be Clemson, Alabama every year, but you're going to get the same top teams. You're going to have your mix from the Big Ten, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. It looks like Michigan State's down, so that could be for the foreseeable future. Then you have LSU, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, possibly. Maybe Florida. I don't know. They need to quit choking. Then you have Clemson, maybe Florida State if they return. Oklahoma, Texas, USC, maybe Oregon. That's your list. You're going to just pick from those handful of teams every year. So I just want to see some diversity. Kansas State, Baylor, North Carolina. Those teams would never, ever have a chance unless you put in auto bins and expand it like Harbaugh said. So I would have hated it after seeing the results. I'm for it. I think it helps the regular season because now you have a chance between maybe like a Kansas State and an Oklahoma State late in the year. I would never watch that game. Like, who cares if they get the 10 wins? But if that 10 wins would put them into the playoffs, I might watch that game. So I'm for expanding it, and anything that takes it above 8, I'm for. Let's get into our big topic. Florida State fired Willie Taggart. The initial thing that came out of this is PJ Fleck signed his extension with Minnesota. I think he was named. They talked about it. And this is almost unprecedented because it's right before they play their first tough opponent. They're 8-0. I looked through their schedule. I don't know if they've beaten anyone with a winning record from the Power 5. Someone put out that every team they played was playing their backup quarterback, which is unbelievable to me. I think the non-Power 5 schools they played might have had their starting quarterback, but the last 5 teams, the starting quarterback either got injured, like Brandon Peters at Illinois, gets injured, he has to leave the game, Minnesota beats them. But then that same Illinois team beats Wisconsin, so maybe that's a different game if he doesn't go down. Either way, you're sitting at 8-0, and Florida State fires Willie Taggart. If they don't fire Taggart, PJ Fleck doesn't sign that until after that Penn State game. They could be boat raced this weekend. It could be 45-10 or some big blowout. But he's rowing. I use that because he uses the saying, row the boat, for non-Big Ten fans. But he's rowing the boat, and he's collecting that cash. They signed him through 2026. Now, last thing, I don't think there were really any big upsets for college football.
Minnesota isn't letting Lou Holtz get away again.
Well, the rumor was that if the shocking thing is when the NFL Harbaugh rumors to NFL started again, PJ Fleck was a lot of the gambling sites' number 1 pick for Michigan's head coach, which I know he coached at Western Michigan, but he doesn't really have any ties other than that to the state. I think he played at Northern Illinois or something like that. So I was surprised to see him listed that high. I don't know if he would have been the guy to help Florida State. And I'll say this before I get your thoughts on it, because he's more of a CEO type. And I've said before, I think that works at a school like Michigan and some of these higher academic schools where you're able to put a figurehead up there and kind of pick and choose just because of your history. Like, okay, we got this guy from our coaching tree. We're going to bring him in as a defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. At Florida State right now, they have a culture issue. And I don't think a guy like PJ Fleck can turn that around. I mean, I think he's better. Minnesota, I don't think they really had a football culture issue. They've been winning semi-consistently. I mean, they've been down, but they haven't been like down and out. They're not like Rutgers bad. It's not like dysfunctional bad. So, I don't know. I don't know what to read on him, but he signed the big extension going into the game. I know we did our picks on that last week, so let's just get into the Florida State stuff. Matt, your coaching candidates, we're going to go through these. Number 1, Urban Meyer. Do you want him?
Negative.
Why not?
I don't want the baggage.
What baggage?
The headache issues, there's all kinds of, every program he touches, there ends up with some kind of scandal, some kind of problem that's not his fault. I don't want him.
The national championships?
Kick rocks.
You don't want them?
No.
I'll put it this way.
Not from him, not with the extra baggage that it comes with. And realistically, how long? He said he was done after leaving Florida. He was done after Ohio State. He'll be done after he goes to Notre Dame. I think he's on the tail end. I don't want someone at the tail end of their career. I don't want to have to keep. I mean, to me, the thing that's frustrating through all this is that we just went through this bullshit 2 years ago, and now you're back at it again. And what takes my anger to another level is when you got people like Kirk Herbstreit that are quoted saying, "I'm done with Florida State," but then you're going to put these pity things out like, "Oh, Willie Taggart was set to fail." Well, you weren't saying that before he got canned. And you're saying how undisciplined they are and how there's all these other issues within the program, and you're done talking about them, you're done covering them. But now I'm sure the Game Day is going to give this whole big boo-hoo segment about Willie Taggart and the good job that he did working with all the issues that were Florida State. It's like, get out of here. Quit talking out of both sides of your mouth. I think it was absolutely the wrong move to do. I think when you look at some of the issues, there were some deep-rooted issues that I don't care who the next coach is, you're not raising the victory banner in year one, regardless of who's there. I think you're about 2 years out, and that's with getting the recruiting class. You're seeing some decommits already, so now you're facing another year where you had a legitimate quarterback that was going to fit your system, that hopefully he stays. You had a running back decommit, the 4-star kid that was going to help because Cam Akers is going to be declaring pro that you need to fill. You're having, if you drag this out and you do this really poorly again, and you drag this out through the early signing day, it's gonna absolutely crush this program even more. Because what are the issues? Quarterback issues, an offensive line. What's going to pass them by because people are signing early? Quarterbacks and offensive line. So you're going to end up right back where you were with the exact same issues. It's not going to help your situation at all.
So I'll say this before I go through the rest of my list. The initial firing, I think, is dumb as hell. Because, number one, I see a lot of people saying that it wouldn't have mattered if they let him finish the year. But if I'm a big-name coach, why would I go to Florida State? They're not paying top dollar. They have financial issues. They've had him going back. Look it up. They had to take extra money from the ACC because they were looking at the Big 12, even if the ACC wants to shove it under the rug or whatever you want to do. I mean, that was real. It was real because they got the money. They got an extra payout from the ACC to help pay their bills after Maryland left because they wanted to keep them. They knew football pays the bills, not basketball. And what did that really get Florida State? I mean, they've been building a football facility now for about as long as, 422 out in Pittsburgh has been under construction. I was thinking about that the other day. Like, I saw someone tweet out there, and I think I might have sent it to you, Matt. It was like, hey, Florida State, this big buyout might hold back the football facility. And I was like, that's not finished? I'm pretty sure Jimbo Fisher started that. In 2003 after they won, was it the Natty year? They're like, yeah, we We got all this money. We're going to build a football facility. 2019. Well, we might not be able to finish that now. It's comical. How are you going to recruit top athletes if you can't even finish your own facilities? Look at what Clemson's doing. They have all kind of facilities now because they've built off that. You had the national championship in 2013. Use the money and actually finish stuff instead of paying off other sports. If finances were that bad, leave.
Well, and here's the other part to this, too. You're saying about finances. What I don't understand was why they were starting to pony up for this big buyout when I think had they have just given the money to Taggart up front to hire the assistants that he needed, a lot of these issues could have been avoided, because I think when he originally came to Florida State, I think he wanted Briles and I think he wanted Jim Leavitt. But because they weren't willing to pay the salaries, it became an issue. So he had to settle with Barnett and Walt Bell. And they weren't getting it done. And you're seeing the change getting Briles on board, that they went from literally dead last in offense to, I don't know recently where they were, but I know they've been close to the top 10 in offensive production. They've been in almost every game this year through into the fourth quarter. It's just they're not disciplined enough to close it out. There's too much nonsense stuff that happens that I think is on the coaching staff, but I think that's also something that you work out as a team, as a program. By Cannon Taggart the way that they did, that Florida State's also now isolated their alumni. People like Deion Sanders that were like outright pleased with the hiring of Taggart are totally going to be isolated now from the university again. So you're going to push away people that are supporting the program.
And that's where I think you get into the donors versus public-facing supporters. Because you had a ton of public support for Willie Taggart. You didn't give him his due. You didn't give him time. You sold out to the donors behind the scenes. Where were they 5 years ago when you could have been finishing this football facility? In that same time frame, NC State built a football facility. How can other programs build one and you don't have the money for it, but yet these boosters have such a say that they're able to raise money so fast? It doesn't make sense. I honestly don't understand it at all. And to bring up, let's go into the next one. This is the biggest rumor, Bob Stoops. And I'll start before I get your thoughts on this. Number one, a small-time local news, I think it was a news station, a television station or something like that, maybe radio. They reported this, and I told Matt right away that, hey, hold your brakes on this. I dug into it, and the initial tweet and report that came out that Bob Stoops was underway and it was going to happen because it's a public institution. I believe the jobs have to be posted, and maybe Florida's a little bit different than the two states I've worked in, but I think the jobs have to be posted and for a certain length. I looked at the University of Florida's website because they're also a state institution. They have it listed as 14 days. The only information I could find on the Florida State website was 7 days, but it was more for faculty. I couldn't find a general job posting rule. So it's somewhere probably between those, at least 7, maybe 14 for a general job like this. They have to post it. There's no way they can fire Willie Taggart and immediately hire Bob Stoops. So that raised the red flag for me. Also the fact that it was one station kind of talking back and forth between themselves just made me think they're just trying to jump in on this, take advantage of Florida State fans, and get the ratings. But Stoops, for you, my last point, I looked at salaries. Oklahoma, I went back in time to where Stoops was there. He made more money than Willie Taggart did when he was coaching at Oklahoma. His assistants almost made double. So you're telling me that Bob Stoops is going to come out of retirement and try to fill a coaching staff on half salary? I don't see how that's going to get you anywhere better than what they were with Willie Taggart. He's going to have to reset the entire culture again, possibly redo the offense again. I mean, if he comes in, I'd be pretty shocked if he kept Bryles because his offensive system was different. I'd be shocked. Levitt, I could see him keeping on, but he usually hires his brother, which I think, is he unemployed or is he with the other brother at Kentucky?
Don't know that one off the top.
But what are your thoughts on Bob Stoops?
My initial reaction was no. And part of the reason was he's in the XFL right now. He's in a GM role, and it seemed like he'd accomplished, in the college level, everything that you would expect. Be like, why? I know he has some connections because he was at Florida as an offensive coordinator there for a minute, but I thought, well, what? I don't see the connect. I don't see what would be appealing to leave that GM role to go to Tallahassee. But then as they started looking and kind of seeing some different things that they were putting out, that almost treating it like a head coach in waiting, that they think the long-term fix is going to be Kendall Browse, but they don't think that he's ready right now to be the head coach. So to bring a veteran presence in like Bob Stoops and pay him, $8 million a year to take that role on and mentor him for a couple years to groom him to be the head coach in waiting, almost like what Bowden did with Jimbo Fisher, where they had him head coach in waiting and then transition Fisher into the program. I mean, it worked out well last time. I'm not saying that it comes up aces again, but I do think that if that's the plan and they're going to keep Levitt there, it's number one, it's going to save the recruiting class because those are the guys that are recruiting these guys. So I think that they would recommit once they see that the stability's back in place. But I think it also would bring a veteran presence and a championship level caliber coach that's going to help navigate this train wreck.
I'd say that the head coach in waiting is a big red flag, and I don't think Florida State wants to go through that again. Because that wasn't a smooth transition. That kind of pushed Bobby Bowden out. He didn't get to go out the way he wanted to because they were afraid they were going to lose Jimbo Fisher. Weren't there rumors of him going to LSU? So I don't think they go through that again.
Rumors of him going to LSU throughout his time as head coach. I mean, up until he left for A&M.
I mean, it has to start somewhere. But I will say I don't see them doing that again. And if you dig deep into the supposed boosters, the administration wants to clean house. So I wouldn't be surprised if they got rid of everybody. And some of them, like you said, might be beneficial to stay. I know Jim Levitt had some baggage, maybe undeserved, I don't know, where he was a head coach, ran into some issues. He's kind of floated around since. I think he's a good coach. He's ran a successful program in Florida. And yeah, keep him for recruiting. I don't know if you're going to clean house. I think some of Willie Taggart's decisions, like he hired Greg Frey. If Greg Frey couldn't put together a successful offensive line at Michigan, a school known for offensive lines, what made you think he was going to be able to do that at Florida State? Like sometimes maybe, Matt, you're right that the money wasn't there, so he had to settle. But that's almost like a Nussmeier for me. Not good at Alabama, so let's hire him at Michigan. Oh, he's awful there. Florida, why don't you take a chance at him? At some point, the guy's not fit to be a coach for that. Put him down another level. Not a big deal. So, go ahead.
Well, with him being a Florida State guy, though, I think that was one of the appeals, was that they're trying to rebuild the tradition and trying to get things back. And so by having guys like wide receivers coach Ron Dugans and having Frey and having Odell still there, they try to keep a lot of guys that played there, that played for Bowden, that played for Mickey Andrews, that had connections to the program to try to get some of the tradition and some of that back. And I don't think that it was a terrible idea, but I think that the overall game management that does fall on Taggart, I think, did end up being an issue. I don't think that he should have been forced out for it right now. Not when you see similar coaches hired at the same time are experiencing the same growing pains, and they're fine. But I feel like Florida State is receiving a lot of unnecessary pressure because of the success that they had through the 90s and into the 2000s. When you put together the kind of winning that they did, and this isn't just being a fan, when you take the bias out, they were such a dominant program. Like, it was on a level of, like, nowadays what you consider Alabama or the last 2 years at Clemson, and they did it for the better part of 15, 20 years. I think that it pissed a lot of people off, and now this is an opportunity for people in the media to really throw rocks and really kick them while they're down. So I think that's why you're seeing a lot more of this backlash, because Scott Frost isn't getting that backlash at Nebraska. Chip Kelly isn't getting that at UCLA, and they're hired in the same time frame, but they're going to really hammer Taggart for this. It's an unfair to kind of pin that on him when he was moving the program in the right direction. And they underscore, stuff like kids not going to class and having really terrible grade point averages in NCAA that also restricted Taggart's ability to cut some of the cancerous players. Because if they had kids going to class and they could remove some of those problem kids without facing further bowl bans and different stuff, he might be in a better situation of bringing his guys on board.
So I'm looking at it, and I think that he should have gotten the rest of the year. I don't think coaches that are improving in the first 4 years of their tenure should be fired. I'm on record saying Rich Rod should never have been fired at Michigan, and I still don't think he should have. He could have turned the tide, because I think an 11-2 Rich Rod in year 4 is totally different than 11-2 Brady Hoke in year 1, because that gives you the jump on Urban Meyer whenever he's brought in, because you have a program. Instead, Michigan pushes him out, even though his record improved every year. They had a bad bowl loss, but it doesn't matter. You have your guys in, you have Denard fit for that offense. You bring in Brady Hoke. I think 2011 plays out exactly the same, if not better, with Rich Rod. And I'll go to my grave saying that. So now you have the same thing, and Florida State's administration came out and said 6-6 isn't good enough. Who knows? Maybe they would have upset Florida. They would have had things skyrocket to the next year. They had, I think, what were they, top 10 recruiting class? That's gone now. They fell to like 18 already, and they're probably going to fall further, because this feels like groomers to me. Tennessee's John Gruden rumors, where immediately Tennessee fires their coach. John Gruden's right in Tennessee. We had fun with it. I loved every minute of it, and it almost feels the exact same. Will it be a situation where Florida State offers a coach and a bunch of boosters rebel like Tennessee did with Greg Schiano? I don't know.
But I'll say this much too. If it was a situation where, and you were one that commented on this before, with Florida State aligning their boosters with the university, that was supposed to be a positive thing, right?
Yeah.
With the way that they were structuring that. So I part of me is thinking the only reason that you fire Taggart right now, with early signing day approaching, is because you know that you have the money that you can go get who you need. And if Stoops was the guy, or I don't care who the guy is, but we'll just use Stoops because his name's being circulated. If it's him, then the university needs to say, if that's who we want and you're financing it, then go get them and make it happen. And you got to stop the bleeding right away. When I look at some of the other people that were hired in that 2018 class, you look at Mario Cristobal right now, who's 15-7 at Oregon, who built the program to that point that he was able to just transition into a turnkey program. Willie Taggart picked it up after Helfrich ran it into the ground. You look at Jimbo Fisher, 15-7 at Texas A&M. How was he able to step in and have a winning record, because he picked up right where Kevin Sumlin left off. I don't know of many coaches that are going to step into a program and in year 2 be vying for a national championship. And if 21 games is the basis of getting to the national championship, you're probably going to have one hand to count the number of coaches that stepped in and immediately won, because number one, you need to build the talent and you need to build the culture.
Matt, Jim Harbaugh did just that, and he still got crucified. 2016, they were one bad spot away from a Big Ten championship and a playoff appearance in his second year. So it can be done, but then even if you're using that high bar, you're always going to be let down. And so you're looking at a situation where right now, to your point, and we can speculate on this, if they fired a coach in the middle of the year, I don't know it's because they had a coach that was ready to go already. Because, if you're doing that, there's only 2 coaches that you would fire your coach in the middle of the year for that's available right now. Urban Meyer and Bob Stoops. National championship winning coaches, check. I don't know anyone else that's available that would fill that void. And some of the disturbing news coming out of USC, they've been slammed with a ton of lawsuits. I sent them to you today. And they had hired Cincinnati athletic director, or at least extended him an offer, and he was said to have accepted. It came out today or last night, maybe yesterday, that he might not take the offer because supposedly the president said you're not allowed to talk to Urban Meyer. And I thought that he was brought in to bring Urban Meyer there. And I almost wonder that Florida State pulled that trigger because they thought they were going to have to compete with USC for Urban Meyer. You fire Taggart right after they hire the Cincinnati AD, you try to get a jump on it. I know a lot of Florida State fans, I read through some of the Urban Meyer comments, they're highly against him because he coached at Florida. To me, that is insane. Where else are you going to get a national championship winning coach, let alone a guy that is one of the only 2 coaches from my research that have won at 2 different schools? Nick Saban being the other. If Urban Meyer said, hey, I want to come to Michigan, and Jim Harbaugh jumped to the NFL, that's a dream scenario. How else are you going to get another coach to fill in? I don't know. I see a lot of people, Michigan fans saying, we would never take him. Why not? Do you want to win or not? Because you can be a David Cutcliffe and win with integrity at Duke, but no one cares about Duke. Is that what you want? I mean, Florida State's made it pretty clear that they don't care about integrity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have fired a coach in the middle of the year.
Well, and the funny thing with the integrity line is that where's the media department at? I mean, they had the Martin Luther King gaffe, but then they post nothing. Your head football coach gets fired and it's like just crickets. Like you don't put a thanks for coaching, thanks for being here, thanks for trying to turn the program around. It's just like, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out.
It's crazy.
It's a bad showing.
I just don't know how. That's why I said it's very similar to the John Gruden search with Tennessee. It just feels like, okay, you have a guy. He's available, just like Tennessee had John Gruden. Everyone thinks, well, this is who they're going after. They make it pretty clear that they're going after him. It doesn't work out. John Gruden obviously ended up going with the Raiders. Bob Stoops in the XFL. There's nothing holding him back from taking the job if he wants it. There are also some other things. USC could be open, which most likely is going to be open. They have a new president, a new athletic director coming in. That job's good as gone. The other one that a lot of people are bringing up is Notre Dame. Are they tired of Brian Kelly? I don't see an issue with Brian Kelly. I know I ripped on him last week after the Michigan loss. He's kept Notre Dame relevant. He came in after a bad situation. He took them to a national championship game and to the playoffs. I know in those games they were outclassed, but in playoff games like that, I think a lot of that goes into planning, and maybe he's just not used to postseason game planning as much as some of these other coaches because they don't have a conference championship game. I don't know. But you have a coach like that. If he jumps to the NFL, that's one thing. There's still rumors every year. I looked them up. Today, there's still a couple teams that are interested in him. Some teams are scared away because they don't think his discipline will work. Worked for Tom Coughlin. Like, if that's the issue, that's the only thing you have against the coach, is he focuses on team discipline. To me, that's crazy that you wouldn't at least take a run at him. I know people make fun of him for yelling at the sidelines, but if Brian Kelly leaves, and there are even rumors some people have him on the job list for Florida State, I don't see how he would jump there. Why would you go from Notre Dame to Florida State? That doesn't make any sense. Even if he was fired, why would Florida State take a guy that was fired for playing half his schedule on the ACC and not getting it done? Like, that's just, to me, that you might as well just stuck with Taggart at that point. But if these other jobs open up, and then, I mean, people say that Harbaugh could jump to the NFL. I mean, that's another gigantic opening if it happens. Probably not, but I don't know.
My bottom line in all this is, if you went in half-cocked with this as an administration and you don't have a guy lined up and you put all your eggs in one basket and the basket fell through, then shame on you, because that's such a stupid thing to do. And there's no reason that a program with that much tradition should be run through the ringer, not once, because you should have learned your mistake from the last time, but going through it the second time. That there's no reason that you should have to go through it. It should just be handle it, get the people in that you need, spend the money to get the guys that you need, and get it done.
That's why I'm surprised that if they did have a guy lined up, why do the middle season firing? That's a Rutgers move. I text you that immediately. That's a team that has no identity, and you think that your interim coach is going to have a better chance at winning. And
well, I'll tell you this. I will say this. The interim coach is Odell Higgins. I honestly don't know why they don't just allow him to be the head coach. He's been with the program for close to 30 years. He's a Bowden guy. Everyone within the program loves him. He's a diehard. And I think I look at what he did as the interim last time, and he had them playing hard. He had them playing well. Jim Leavitt now gets to take the vacated spot that Taggart left. So he's going to be able to be on the field. He's going to be able to be hands-on with the kids. They're going to have everything aligned the way that they need to do. At this point, I would almost want to see them just sign Higgins, almost pull the Ogeron, where, people gave him, a hard time and called him Cajun Hoke, but it is what it is. Like, he has LSU playing right now, and they gave him more than 21 games.
So we'll see. I think the only rumors that really scare this away are that if the administration wants to clean house, that includes him. Because the rumors are they want to distance themselves from Free Shoes U, the issues from the Jimbo Fisher with the players off the field issues, Willie Taggart's players having on the field issues. And if they're going to clean house and try to go 100%, then go 100%. That's why I don't understand why they would do it mid-season if that was the reasoning behind it.
Well, it makes no sense. And when you look at, there was a clear divide on that team, and there still is right now, of the Jimbo era players and the guys that Taggart was bringing in. And when you look at the younger players that Taggart was bringing in, they were the guys that had character. They were the guys that were playing with heart, and they were the guys that were contributing. And when you're watching some of these plays and you're seeing some of the Jimbo era guys, and it's not just being bitter because he left for A&M, but there are guys that he recruited that were very talented, but were also very selfish. And so I think in the midst of trying to get them to after winning the national championship in 13, it was, we're going to take a flyer on these questionable people to try to see if we can maintain this run for as long as possible. It was a major strikeout, and then he ended up with a bunch of guys that were selfishly out for themselves and not going to class and doing everything the wrong way, that it led to him just piecing out and heading to A&M.
That's where I think a lot of people gave Harbaugh a lot of issues when he came in. He processed a lot of guys that might have been locker room issues. I don't know. But I wasn't against it at the time. And looking back, I'm still not against it, because if you're trying to build a culture, that's how you can turn around a team that didn't win into one that wins immediately. Getting rid of a bunch of those guys, if they don't buy in, go somewhere else, transfer somewhere else.
If you can, if you have Michigan was in that spot where he could push a lot of guys out and bring his, a lot of transfer people in. But when your back's against the wall because no one's going to class and the cumulative GPA is completely sunk, you can't do that. Otherwise, you get hit with sanctions.
That's where I think it would have helped to bring in a gigantic class like Harbaugh did his first year, of guys that you can put in the classroom, get stuff done. I think the first 2 years he did that. Brought in like the maximum class allowed, 30 or whatever it is, and then had even more guys transfer in. And then the guys that weren't doing the classwork or whatever else they needed, they were gone. Told to transfer. Some of them are still playing, which is good for them, turn their stuff around. Some of them, I think, had to go the JUCO route. But at some point, you have to change the culture or you're going to be stuck in this situation. That's where maybe they clean house now. If you're having so many issues, do you really want to coach from that staff? Working with the guys still? They might feel comfortable with them. You might never get out of that cycle. I do have one more coach for you, though, Matt. Mike Leach.
I'd love to see the Pirate, because if for nothing else, when he took over at Washington State, their offensive line was an absolute disaster, and he knew how to compensate with quick throws and building his air raid offense around the lack of talent until he could get the people in place. So I'd love to see him there. And also for the extra added bonus that then you'd have to open up your heart a little bit to Florida State, because I know you like the Pirate and like to just see him down in Tally.
Well, I will say I was going to open it up because a lot of longtime listeners know I'm a big fan of Mike Leach. And he took the Tennessee interview. Administration was kind of scared away because they didn't know how the donors would react. But at that same time, the rumors were that he came out, he wasn't 100% sold on Tennessee. He thought the number one job that he would be successful at would be Florida State. And from the outside perspective, it makes sense. He was at Texas Tech where he wasn't the big dog. If he took the Tennessee job, he's not the big dog in that conference. Hell, he's not the big dog in that division. You're going to have to recruit against Georgia. You're going to have to recruit against Florida. And he likes to recruit his own way. Is he successful? He was successful doing it at Texas Tech against Texas and Oklahoma. And they both had national championship winning coaches while he was doing it. Mac Brown was there, Natty in 05, and Bob Stoops was there. And he was able to have success against both of them at a much smaller school. Florida State, he would be top dog. Miami's not what they used to be. Clemson right now, they've had a good run with Dabo, but if they could get Mike Leach signed for 5 to 10 years, we don't know how much longer Nick Saban's going to coach. Does Dabo jump to Alabama? And then Mike Leach is sitting there. And even then, I still think Mike Leach might be able to out-recruit Dabo at Florida State because Florida State has some built-in advantages being in Florida. It's not a far-fetched idea. Clemson has been hanging on with top 10 classes. It's not like, besides this one, I think this year they have the number one class. Maybe I don't even know if they have it anymore. But it wasn't like they were winning with a string of top 10 classes, number one. They were on the tail end of that top 10. They were closer to Notre Dame than they were to Ohio State or Alabama. So Mike Leach could come in, get some of those Florida guys to stay there. I think that would bring a lot of excitement. And I'll cheer for the Pirate no matter where he goes, unless he ends up at Ohio State, which I know he won't. And possibly Michigan State. If he ended up there, I'd be so disappointed. And to a lesser extent, Notre Dame. But they don't want to play us anyway, so it doesn't matter. I did have one more thought for my final bell. James Franklin. Penn State sees that PJ Fleck got his extension. There is zero reason for James Franklin not to get the biggest extension at Penn State. You guys talk about being a top program. How you had Jopa. You have a coach that's winning at a killer rate. His winning percentage, I think, is better than what Joe Paterno had in his last years in the Big Ten. Big Ten champion, close to the playoffs. He should have been in the playoffs in, was it 2016 or 17? Should have been in the playoffs, got left out. What are you doing? Extend him. He's mentioned in the Florida State job. I don't think he would take it, but I really think that USC is going to make a push for him if it's true that the president does not want Urban Meyer. Who else is USC going to go after? Like, I don't know. They don't think they have anyone tied to their program. Do they go for someone that's in the NFL? They always talk about Jack Del Rio. Like, I don't even think that would save USC. James Franklin down there, though, he's a great recruiter. I don't think Penn State would be able to land a better recruiter. And people make fun of him for being a bad in-game coach. Just be the CEO. It's the same thing I wanted from Harbaugh. You don't have to be the best in-game coach if you're able to be the face of the program, take the criticism, laugh about it, and sign top recruiting classes. That's exactly what Franklin's doing. Bring in coordinators to help you with the in-game stuff, and then sit back. Take the credit. Be the face of the program. He's great at it. I can't knock him. I mean, he hasn't really had the in-game issues. I know his staff has kind of grown over the years. They lost Moorhead to Mississippi State. Everyone thought that was going to be a killer blow. But he's able to give his coordinators control and be the face of a program that Bill O'Brien left specifically because of the Joe Paterno boosters. He came out and said he couldn't take it anymore because the boosters would come out and say Joe Paterno didn't do it that way. You don't hear much of that with James Franklin because I honestly don't think he cares. That's the kind of guy they need to get them to the next phase of their program. Do you want to go back to being a middling third wheel in the Big Ten? Because right now, he's top 2. Sign him. Extend him. Do whatever you need to do. Because let's say if Harbaugh does get his wish in the Big Ten, where they're able to sign away the Big Ten championship game and maybe schedule another regular season game or something, which I think would benefit the Big Ten because then you don't have the gauntlet. Because right now they have a rivalry issue, the Michigan and Ohio State game. Game has the best ratings every year. They can't get rid of it. They don't want to put Michigan or Ohio State in the other division because then you could have them play back-to-back, which could almost kill a playoff situation. And they really don't want to have their top 2 play for that same reason. So you're kind of stuck with what are you going to do if you want that game to end on the last week of the season. Like LSU and Alabama doesn't really matter because there's still a couple of more weeks to play. If Alabama was to stumble and after LSU lost to them, it wouldn't even matter. People would forget about that loss. But if it's Thanksgiving weekend, people aren't forgetting about it. So that's what I think. I think Penn State should lock up James Franklin, continue to make the Big Ten East possibly the best division in college football, and make sure that they have coaches that are well paid. Don't pay half or whatever of what Ohio State and Michigan are paying and expect the same results forever. Anything you got for the final bell?
I had a pair of things. Number one, finishing up some of the coaching speculation. You were saying with Florida State, one of the guys that I think if the bottom falls out that I wouldn't mind them looking at would be Chris Kleiman, the coach that's at Kansas State right now. He was coaching at North Dakota State, and I kind of like the way that the Bisons run their offense. And I think he's kind of transitioned that, and he has Kansas State playing well as they transitioned out of Bill Snyder. So I think right now his salary is $2.3 million, and I would assume that they don't have an insane buyout on him right now. I could be way off on it, but I think that would be someone that I would be willing to take a flyer on if that situation came about, because being at North Dakota State, he knows how to build a program. He knows how to get that stuff going in the right direction. And I think that he would probably be someone that could be up to the task of turning around what's left at Florida State. The other thing that kind of stood out to me was the Cleveland Browns defensive back. Did you see this?
Oh, the meltdown on Twitter.
Yeah, Jermaine Whitehead just lost his mind after losing to the Broncos and was like telling people he was going to kill them and where to find them and the whole shebang. It's like, keep it together.
The craziest thing from that is that people were trying to post what he was saying, but they were censoring. Like, they would write out B instead of bitch. But they would have clear as day, like ass and shit in it. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you only censoring one word, but keeping the rest of it intact as you were out there putting his statements out there? Like, if you're going to censor the guy, censor him. Like, are you expecting kids to see it? I don't understand it. If you have a guy that's tweeting it out there, he's putting it in public. That's his quote. Just say it. So yeah. I thought it was crazy. And to be honest, I don't see why players have social media. I know they're trying to build their brands, but hire someone. And I'm not saying your wife or like your kid, because they don't want to see all the trash talk to you. You can hire a personal assistant probably for pretty cheap. Like, yo, I see you're a grad school student and you need money. I'll give you $10,000 a year to just run my Twitter. Okay. That's not a bad deal. I guarantee they could find someone like that. Or like, hey, you're a coaching assistant at so-and-so school that I went to. How about I hire you part-time to work on my social media? And then just sit back and don't do anything. Because then you're not in trouble. And then if something did post by that guy, you can clear your hands of it and say, I don't even have my login. Have a fall guy. Isn't that Chris Carter's line? Have a fall guy, and then you don't have to get in trouble. So I saw that, and I thought, that's crazy. What are you doing? Having a meltdown? I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often. And I think some players could even embrace it, kind of like a WWE, and just be the bad guy. Talk a bunch of trash, out there having fun, doing your thing. Keep it clean, though, for the families. I think that would be funny. Because they always do like those Twitter segments where they're making fun of people on like late night TV or whatever because they don't have any other ideas. Let some athlete do it. Anything else you got?
One other thing, and this is annoying, but at the end of the Florida State game, Miami safety Bubba Bolden was jumping around celebrating after an interception and injured himself and is out for the year now. So, goes to show you, don't excessively celebrate. You'll be done for the year.
Hey, Matt, I have some bad news for you. Breaking news, Florida State just hired Terry Bowden.
No. Well, he did set the table for Dabo Swinney to come in and win at Clemson. So,
what would be your thoughts if that's what happened?
I would say they should have hired Vince Lombardi. Because if they wanted a disciplinarian, why not just resurrect him?
Hey, Bo Pelini's still out there if you want a disciplinarian. 9 wins. I don't know if that'd be good enough for the boosters. They didn't like 6-6. How about 9-4?
Not good enough.
We'll see. I think next week we're going to have a better picture of who is a real candidate. Even though you're in the middle of the season, I don't know how much push you're going to get. They said they wanted someone in place before the end of the season. I would be shocked if that happened and it wasn't a Bob Stoops or someone that's out of the game. Because I honestly don't see how you can hire another coach during the season. Maybe you have some talks at the end of the year, but then you're really not poaching anyone that's a contender. But we'll see. We'll check back in. Thanks for listening. I know we kind of went long, but this is breaking news. Maybe, who knows, maybe on Thursday we'll have to do another special show because they hire Bob Stoops and I'm wrong. We'll see. I looked before the show. The job was not posted. So you're going into a big game weekend, LSU, Alabama, and Penn State, Minnesota. So have fun, and we will see you next week.